Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What's New with ME. I am your host, Ali Mehdaoui, and tonight we're tackling one of the most serious and complex stories unfolding in the world right now: the rapidly escalating conflict involving Iran, Israel, and the United States. Now, before we dive in, let's set the tone. This episode is not about taking sides. It's not about Republican or Democrat. It's about understanding. Because when the world gets loud, angry, and polarized, someone has to slow things down and explain what's actually happening. And tonight, that's what we're going to do. We'll walk you through how this conflict started, why tensions have been building up for decades, what had happened in the past few days, and how the United States, Democrats, Republicans, Europe, Russia, and the Muslim world are reacting. Along the way, we're going to try to do something that is becoming rare in modern media: context. Segment one: how did we get here? So, to understand what's happening today, we need to rewind the clock, because this conflict didn't just start last week. It didn't start last year. And honestly, it didn't even start this century. The tension between Iran and Israel has been building for more than 40 years. Back in 1979, Iran experienced what's known today as the Islamic Revolution. Before that revolution, Iran had a very different government, one that had strong relationships with the West and with Israel. But when the revolution took place, Iran became an Islamic republic, and its new leadership adopted a very strong ideological opposition to Israel and U.S. influence in the Middle East. From that moment forward, the relationship changed dramatically. Over the decades, Iran has supported various regional groups that opposed Israel. Israel, in turn, has viewed Iran as one of its most strategic threats, especially because of concerns surrounding Iran's missile programs and nuclear capabilities. So, for many years, this conflict played out mostly in what analysts call a shadow war: cyber attacks, proxy conflicts, covert operations, regional influence battles. But direct confrontation between the two countries was relatively rare until recently. Segment two: the escalation. Over the past few years, tensions have intensified dramatically. Israel has increasingly targeted Iranian military infrastructure and allied groups throughout the region. Iran expanded its missile capabilities and regional alliances, and the United States, depending on the administrations, has escalated between diplomacy and military pressure. Then recently, the situation escalated to the level that has many experts concerned about the possibility of a broader regional conflict. Reports indicate that the US and Israeli forces have conducted strikes targeting Iranian military assets, while Iran has responded with military missiles and drone activity across multiple areas of the region. Several countries have activated air defense systems. Military forces are repositioning. And the Middle East, already one of the most geopolitically sensitive regions on Earth, is once again at the center of global attention. Now, here's the important part: when situations like this develop, the conflict itself is only one part of the story. The other part is how the world reacts. Segment three: reactions inside the United States. So let's start at home, right? As you might expect, the reaction inside the United States has been politically divided, but interestingly enough, not always along the lines people expect. Some Republican leaders have expressed strong support for military actions against Iran, arguing that Iran represents a serious long term security threat in the region. Their argument is fairly straightforward. If Iran continues expanding military capabilities and regional influence, waiting could make this situation more dangerous later. However, there are also some voices within conservative circles who are skeptical about deeper involvement in Middle Eastern conflicts. After 2 decades of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, there is a growing sentiment among many Americans across party lines that the United States should be cautious about entering another prolonged regional conflict. On the Democratic side, many leaders have expressed concerns about escalation. Some Democrats are asking questions about congressional authorization of war and powers. Others are emphasizing the importance of diplomacy and international coordination. But even within the Democratic Party, opinions vary. Some support strong security partnerships with Israel. Others are more critical of how the situations have been handled. In other words, Washington is doing what Washington does best, debating loudly while the world is simply watching. Segment 4, reaction across the Muslim and Arabic world. Now let's look at how this is being viewed across the Muslim and Arab world. And here's where things get complicated. Many governments in the region are navigating a very delicate situation. On one hand, several Arab countries maintain important security relationships with the United States. Some also have diplomatic relations with Israel. On the other hand, public opinion within many of these countries can be sensitive to the conflict involving Israel and regional power dynamics. So, leaders in the region are largely calling for a de escalation and stability, while also strengthening their defensive posture. You may also see statements urging calm. But behind the scenes, many countries are preparing for the possibility that the conflict could actually expand. And that's because the Middle East operates like a very complex chessboard. When two pieces move aggressively, everyone else in the board has to start thinking about several moves ahead. Segment 5, Europe steps in. Europe's response has been focused on stability and diplomacy. Leaders from countries like France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have been emphasizing the importance of preventing a wider regional war. France, in particular, has repositioned naval assets towards the Mediterranean, not necessarily as an offensive move, but as a way to protect European interests and maintain stability in the region. European governments understand something very clearly. When conflict erupts in the Middle East, the consequences often extend far beyond the region. Energy markets, migration patterns, global trade routes, all of these can be affected. So for Europe, the priority right now is preventing escalation. Segment 6, Russia and the global power dynamics. Then there was Russia. So Russia has strongly criticized the strikes against Iran and has framed the situation as destabilizing to the global order. Now, Russia's position is influenced by several strategic factors. Russia maintains diplomatic and military relationships with Iran. And in the broader geopolitical landscape, Moscow often positions itself as the counterweight to the United States' influence. So Russia's messaging in this situation reflects both geopolitical strategy and diplomatic positioning. In the background, there's also the question of China and North Korea, countries that are closely watching how this conflict unfolds. Because conflicts like this can influence global military strategy and alliances for years to come. Segment 7, what happens next? Now, here's the truth. No one knows exactly what happens next. But experts are watching several key indicators. Will the conflict remain limited? Will diplomatic negotiations reemerge? Or could additional actors become involved? The hope across much of the international community is that cooler heads prevail, because history has shown us something very clearly. When regional conflicts escalate into global confrontations, the consequences can last for generations. Segment 8, a moment of perspective. So before we close tonight, let's take a moment of perspective. When we talk about geopolitical, military strategy, and international alliances, it's easy to forget the human side of these stories. Families, communities, young people on all sides of the world who simply want safety, opportunity, and peace. Most ordinary people, whether they live in Tehran, Tel Aviv, Washington, Paris, or somewhere else, actually want the same basic things: security, stability, a future. And sometimes the loudest voices in global politics completely forget that. So tonight, as a close, instead of shouting across ideological lines, let's do something different. Let's stay informed. Let's stay thoughtful. Let's remember that understanding a situation does not require us to hate the people on the other side of that conversation. Because the world does not, and I repeat, does not get better when we divide into teams. It gets better when we actually listen. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Thank you for joining us for What's New with ME. I'm Ali Mehdaoui, and we'll continue following this story closely as developments unfold. Please stay safe. Please stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a blessed day, everybody.